Hello, everybody. Good evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Templar Reports. I don't think I've been here for a while, actually. I can't remember the last time I was on a Templar Report, so I'm very pleased to be with you all. Do let me know if you can see and hear me. We should be broadcasting live onto Purged TV. And if there's anyone watching who's not in the chat, because a couple of times people have contacted me and said, oh, I've tried to post into the chat and it doesn't work. It's because you have to have an account. It's free. You just have to put in your name and then you can chat. And I always encourage people to do that because I like interacting. I don't want to just be talking at people. I like some response. So anyway, if you're watching and you're not in the chat, then set your account up and get involved. I hope everyone's well. Let me just go over to the comments and see who's in. They seem to be working all right. Good stuff. Happy Tuesday. I know it's weird. Looks like a sunny day. Well, it is quite sunny. Well, the sun is coming in and out, but it's cold. And earlier, I mean, I'm not even that long ago, it was pouring down with rain. So, and then the sun makes a little bit of an appearance. It's never particularly sunny in Northern Ireland, I have to say. I mean, this is coming from someone who grew up in England, and yeah, the difference in the weather is remarkable. It is remarkable. But anyway, let me not go on about the weather because it's such a British thing. We just love the weather. It's all we ever talk about. Anyway, let me say hello to people. Ivan is in. Good day to you, Ivan, and Scott the Prussian. Good to see you. And Wes, good to see you, brother Wes. Thank you for tuning in. And Lady Matriarch, good afternoon to you. And Brian Payton, good day. And Brian Siddock, the two Brians. Good Tuesday, brothers and sisters. Nice to see you, Brian. Roger Madison, good to see you as well. And Yvonne has put a link up there. Do you know what? I'm going to say this now before I forget, because I'm going to talk to you about feminism today. So there's been so much stuff. It's all interwoven, all the feminists, the curse of feminism, it's all interwoven. And I want to look at some of the things that I've seen on social media and in the news in the last few days. So before I get into that, because I'm probably going to rant, spoiler alert, I'm just going to talk about what Ivan just shared there, the Priory project, help us finish the Priory project. And now let me see if I can open this up. So I'm going to share my screen with you, actually. Give me a moment. There we go. So here's the latest update from the Priory, and they're sent out every week. And this one, what a view we now have, Priory update. And there's the view from the top windows going in. And there's Mr. Dowson with his thumbs up at the top windows. These are the rooms on the top floor. And I think you may have seen a video of Jim. You saw a video of Jim and I crawling up there. Well, it's only a few weeks ago. It wasn't even that long ago. Remarkable progress has been made since then. Jim is standing up and there's no beams or anything in the way, and the windows are in, and it really is taking shape. But those two top rooms, which have provided so much extra space, which is really important, really important, because it's not a house, it's not a domestic dwelling, this is a Priory house, so it's there for you and I and our families and our brothers and sisters in Christ involved in the order to use. And so the more people that can sleep there and that can stay there, obviously the better. But those two top rooms and the water closet that they've put at the top, which is remarkable. I don't know how George does it. I actually don't know how George does any of it, because George is, let me just come off of this for a moment and then I'll come back to it. George is a remarkable man. George the builder, a remarkable man. They don't make men like George. They really don't. Well, not a lot of them anyway. The work that he's doing up there is incredible. But this has been quite a setback. Not a setback, but it set the clock back a bit. I think that we just all want it done as ASAP. And I'm really impatient. I'm going to tell you something now. This is one of my many flaws. I have so many. I couldn't possibly list all of them because we'd be here for the rest of our lives. But one of my many flaws is that I'm impatient. And I genuinely am impatient. I want everything yesterday. And I don't mind working just through the night to get things done, but I just need things done, right? That's my nature. And so I remember I saw a picture actually earlier. I don't have it to show you now, but I think you probably will see it a million times. I saw a picture earlier of myself standing at the foundations when the chapter house didn't even exist, hadn't been built yet. And I thought today, wow, like think that wasn't, it feels like a lot has happened since then. But actually, when you consider how much has taken place, the chapter house is there, the church has been renovated, there's a hub. And I just saw somebody said, oh, Brian Siddick said, I can't wait to see it in June. Brian, I can't wait for you to see it all, because it is a fully functioning priory, you know, and it's really important. Jim always says the Knights Templar aren't just an online group. You know, we have actual structures and bricks and mortar, and a church, a functioning church, a church that is functioning daily. These are things that nobody else has. And these are things actually that people could have. There are people who call themselves nationalists, and even Christians certainly in the United Kingdom, who have fundraised over the years millions, and I mean that, millions of pounds. In fact, probably in excess of or nigh on £10 million, which would equate to well over $10 million, as you know. And there's nothing to show for it apart from a private family dwelling or a villa in Spain and expensive clothing and expensive holidays. And it's so frivolous, and it's leaving nothing for future generations involved in the cause. Nothing whatsoever. It's leaving zero legacy. And so that's for that reason it's so important that we have these structures, because this isn't necessarily even for us, right? When we're long gone, the fight's not going to end when we're no longer here. I know that we all kind of, a lot of the time, people can't see past their own existence, but the fight won't end. In fact, the fight's going to just get ramped up after we're gone. So it's really important. And the reason I wanted to just talk about this today is I haven't been on the show for a while, and I've watched Jim's updates, and I always get the emails through, and I'm at the chapter house a fair amount, helping out with admin and all the rest of it. I'm not far away, I'm only down the road, so I am helping out as much as I can. But I have to say, things are really, really tight at the moment. I'm just going to put it out there while I've got the opportunity to. Things are really tight at the moment, and I know that they're probably tight for everybody. I can quite imagine, like certainly here in the United Kingdom, Labour are squeezing every penny out of everybody, and it's a difficult time. So for everyone who has contributed and continues to contribute towards the Priory project, I just want to say thank you. I'm really grateful. And I get the privilege of being able to see the progress, like in real time, touch it, see it, go up into the roof space and have a chat with George about what he's doing. Not that I understand any of it, but I get a chance to do that, and you guys don't. So I just wanted to just kind of relay that it is moving forward, but we just have to keep momentum. And this month has been a particularly desperate month, I have to say, for the renovation project fundraising. We've hit a bit of a lull, to say the least. So if there's anybody watching and they haven't given yet, and you're in a position to do so, I would urge you. The link is there. Maybe Yvonne will put it up again. It was the link that I was just showing you on the screen. If you're in a position to chip in, please do. No one can do everything. Everyone can do something. I contribute to the renovation fund, and I know that so many people that are in the chat today have done so. Maybe there are people watching for the first time, new members that aren't even aware of the building project. You hopefully at some point in the near future, you can come and check it out. So hopefully when it's done, you'll be staying there with some of the rest of us from all over the world. But only when we've got it finished can we all really reap the benefit of it. And I'm not just saying this because I'm just inherently impatient, because I am totally impatient. Like, it's one of my many flaws. But I just want to keep the momentum going, because it really, really has slowed down. This month has been very, very difficult, and it's difficult to the point where I'm just a little bit concerned. So the other thing that I was going to suggest is, if you've given, thank you so much. Perhaps you know someone else who might be in a position to donate. You might know someone who is would be interested in sort of right. We don't need huge, vast It's really weird. It's a strange country. Let me say hello to some of the other people that have come in since I've been waffling. Matthew Snyder's in. Good morning to you, Matthew. Nice to see you. And Paul Telford's in as well. And oh God, it's happening every single day. Let me explain to you. Every single day, my head. This morning, I finished work at 1 o'clock this morning, 1:10 this morning. I thought I need to stop and start the day in about 5 hours again. Charles has been really, really generous towards that. So thank you for chipping into this as well, Charles. And it just shows that if people do whatever they can, like not everyone can do that, but whatever you can. I just can't wait until we can all meet there. The big dining room. I'm sure I'm probably going to, well, Lady Matriarch, I'm hoping I can rope in to help with the food, but the women are going to be down those quarters, I expect, sorting the food out in the big dining room. The big dining room we've got the tribute to Angela, Sister Angela. Just can't wait. And I'm here all the time. Well, up there, up the road all the time. So I get to see what's happening, but it's getting there. Lady Matriarch's in for helping with the food. Right. Thank you, guys. Let me just crack on and talk to you about feminism. Oh, gosh, if there's one thing that I despise and I absolutely loathe, it's feminism. So I don't know how I missed this. It's so dark. I might switch a light on. Let me see. I don't even know if that's any better. That's marginally better. We've gone from sunshine to it's about to pour down with rain within about 3 minutes. I didn't know that there was this weird space adventure that was taking place with all of these ghastly celebrity women. Bezos' girlfriend, I don't even know her name. I don't know these people. I don't follow celebrity culture. I can't stand it. I despise it. I really don't have any time for it. But apparently all these celebrity women have gone up to space for 10 minutes. I don't even look, let's just, first of all, does anyone actually believe that this happened? Because I'm just at the point where the whole thing, give them bread and circuses, the whole world is a stage. It's just nonsense, isn't it? Did it happen? I don't know. Give me your thoughts in the chat. Ragnar said pigs in space. It's just like the worst of the worst. Anyway, so apparently, I'll just tell you what apparently happened. I didn't know that this was taking place, but apparently a gaggle of celebrity women went up in this little space shuttle that looks like something one of my godchildren made, and it took them 10 minutes and they went just outside of the whatever that remit is that means that you're actually in outer space, and they've all been hailed as heroines for doing this. And people are saying this kind of diminishes the effort and the actual achievement of women who have gone into space and spent months on these different exhibitions and what have you. And so there's all that. It's actually upsetting everyone. It's even upsetting the feminists, which I think is great. But let me show you some of the footage because I just find this bizarre. And I don't know. I just think, yeah. So Roger Madison said 10 minutes of weightlessness. Yeah, exactly. Like an amusement ride. And I read earlier, because I was quite intrigued by this. I actually genuinely have very, very little interest in space. People have told me before that I'm really ignorant when it comes to this, right? And maybe I am. I have been told that, you're so ignorant when it comes to this, that you've got zero interest. I got friends that are really, really interested in outer space. And I could not give a monkeys. And I know that does sound really ignorant, because I'm really interested in a wide variety of different subjects, but traveling to space and searching for something else outside of God's creation that I can see and I can touch. There's so much in the world that I can see and I can touch and I can experience, and I can literally witness the majesty of God and his creation. I don't understand. I almost find it insulting that people are obsessed with going to find something else. Do you know what? I don't know whether that's just me. Zero interest in it, right? None whatsoever. So I don't even really get the logistics. I just understand, apparently, this has been going on a long time. Lots of rich people, celebrities, have paid to go and do these little up, down, and Roger said, these expensive amusement park rides just outside of gravity, I guess, and then back down. Lady Matrix said, I read it was an initiation ceremony by someone on Facebook giving this. I don't know. It's just, Andrew said, made from the tinfoil toilet roll tube and a yogurt pot. That's what it looks like. John Kopasaki's in. Good morning to you. Nice to see you, John. So they wasted a ton of money on their egos when there are people hurting the world over. Oh, bravo indeed, Mitchell Cameron. I agree with you. Absolutely. So yeah, and Roger, this is what I want to show people. This is what Katy Perry had to say. But first of all, let me show you all of these celebrity women that we're all supposed to worship and adore. All right, take a look at.
She didn't really close it again. Come on out, guys. We'll see your babies.
Where are my babies?
They're over here. Go see them.
Where? I have to go
Right
there.
there.
Okay.
Katie!
Woo! Thank you. Thank you. Amanda! Woo!
Hey, Joe!
Woo! Oh my gosh!
Gail!
I just have to have a moment with the ground. Let me just appreciate the ground for just a second. Thank you, Jesus. Oh my God. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Oh, I'm so proud. So proud of you.
Oh my God. Woo-hoo!
Amazing. I'm so proud of you. Come around the bushes here.
Come on. I have no, it's not working. So someone just tell me when we're on. Does anyone have our app?
I don't know. Maybe I've lived too long. Right? It's anything more irritating than that piece of footage. So, I love what Ragnar said. Ragnar said the plastic, fantastic. So much just fakeness, just all round. And who was it that said it in the comments? Someone in the comments, Andrew said, wouldn't the money spent in that have been better used on real needy causes? Yeah. Look, I'm happy for people to make money, and I'm happy for people to use their money as they please, right? As long as it's not for anything illegal or, immoral, like pornography or what have you, which I'm going to get onto shortly, because that's another thing that's been doing the rounds. But I just find these people are just so vacuous, aren't they? They're just so vacuous. And even when you do see these celebrities sponsoring a cause, have you ever noticed that it's always something that's like very like self-gratifying? It's always, or it's something that's so overtly woke. Oh, we're sponsoring like some Black Lives Matter event, or just there doesn't seem to be, none of these people seem to have like a genuine caring bone in their body. And the funniest thing about all of this, John said, how on earth did all the Botox in their faces not explode? I don't know about that, but it is definitely a good question. Whenever you see these people, they're always congratulating themselves, aren't they? Do you ever find that? It's like those ceremonies. Everybody knows how much I hate these award ceremonies, like the Oscars and the Golden Globes and the Grammys. I just find them so repulsive. I cannot bear to look at them. I cannot bear. I wouldn't anyway. Why would I want to sit through hours of footage of these multi-millionaires in their like extraordinarily expensive and extravagant attire that's probably been made in some sweatshop in Indonesia, right? Or China, as it turns out. And they're all like just sitting there clapping and congratulating each other on being so wonderful. Who is watching this? It's insane to me that people will actually sit and yeah, Mitch said that's because they no longer own their souls. That's what this is. That's what this is. This is the curse of feminism. And I know that people might think, oh, but it's not just feminism, but that's what the root of this is. I mean, it's, you know, a bit, we could go a bit further back, but ultimately, all of these little offshoots, this vacuous existence and, you know, these boss women like, oh yeah, look, we've been to space. Listen to what Katy Perry said. I've never heard someone use so many words, apart from Jordan Peterson, actually. Jordan Peterson has a remarkable knack of using like loads and loads of words and saying absolutely nothing. Katy Perry also seems to be not quite as eloquently, I might add, but listen to this word salad from Katy Perry. And then at the end of it, she really demonstrates what the driving force behind all of this is. Listen to this.
It is the highest high, and it is surrender to the unknown, trust. And this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training, it's the team, it's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more. This is like up there with all the, you know, different tools that I've learned in my life, from meditation to the Hoffman process. This is up there because what you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey. And then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure. And you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong, divine feminine right now.
By the way, you're such a badass. I love that the month of April, you're like, I'm going to space and I'm launching my tour.
Divine feminine. Just for anyone who needs a translation, Satanism. That's what we're dealing with there. Divine feminine. There's nothing divine about these people. There's no divinity there. These people aren't God. I know they'd like to think this is what this is all fueled by. You hear her, oh, you have to love. This is all about a love for yourself. What are you talking about? Do you not think these people love themselves enough? And she's now lauding the fact that she's loved herself so much that she will trust herself to go up and down in 10 minutes. And I don't even know whether they did it. Like, whatever. I don't even care. I'm so not interested. The funny thing about this is the first clip that I showed you, I'm not even going to play it again, but if you see it, because I can't sit through it again. I've seen it already. This is twice I've seen it now. I'm not going to put you through it again. But if you can be bothered to watch it again, it's doing the rounds on social media. It's everywhere. That Jeff Bezos, when he's talking to, I don't know her name. I don't know any of these people's names, but when he's talking to his trophy that he's got, he hugs her, and you can see she's forgotten her lines because he has to prompt her to say, "Where are my babies?" You know, none of these people are thinking, if this was such a dangerous, you know, journey where you had to basically put all of your trust in yourself, not trusting in God, not trusting in the science, not trusting in the work that's gone into it, not trusting in the people that have created it, the engineering. No. These women have trusted in themselves to do this, and they think that they're divine feminine. That's what they think, right? And they have to be prompted to pretend that they care where their kids are. Where are my babies? Yes, she has to be prompted. It's so cringe. I just find it gross. I really do. But it all comes from this satanic agenda. And it's about these people selling their souls, as you quite rightly said earlier, selling their souls and becoming their own gods and worshipping themselves and each other and being in this elite, disgusting group. I mean, it's so, so evil. And it's so anti-Christ. It really is. I don't see any of these people. Like, these are major, major celebrities. And I have traveled all over the world. I have traveled certainly extensively throughout the United Kingdom. And I'm telling you now, I don't see loads of charitable institutions and buildings and physical structures that have been erected by any of these celebrities for the good of the community in the UK. And you might say, well, these particular people are American, but they don't there's nothing tangible. It's all like, look at me, look how fantastic I am. Imagine the expense that was just wasted. And she had the audacity to say about the training. Can you imagine what actual astronauts who go into space are thinking when they watch Katy Perry talk about the teamwork and the training? Just whatever. It's just sickening. It really is. But these people are very, very dangerous. They really are, because I'm not one of these like tinfoil hat crazy people. There was a time years ago when I would hear this sort of stuff and I would be like, oh, here we go, like some crackpots talking about like child sacrifice or whatever. And there was a time when I just thought, this is just absurd. But these people are so demonic, and all of the symbolism, and look, it all is pointing to one direction, and it's all to do with that elite. And that's why you see when there are some people that step out of Hollywood, they're very clear. It's because I can't be associated with that. I wish more people would blow the lid on it. It's a spiral, but this has been going on for a long time. And again, if you want to bring it back to its roots, this is just the abandonment of Christianity. This is abandonment of faith. And even when there were ancient civilizations, I want to show you something here, right? Because there's been this ancient altar that's been found. These ancient civilizations that existed a long time before any of this celebrity culture did, these people were performing child sacrifices. And there's been an altar that's found in the Guatemala jungle. And archaeologists have said that this was used for sacrifices, especially of children. And it's really strange, actually, watching the reaction to this, because I've seen this today and it's all over. It's on social media, it's on the news, everybody's talking about this. And I thought, hold on a minute. Why are people speaking about like this like it's something unusual? Why are people speaking about this like, first of all of these ancient structures, you will find this cultish child sacrifice ritual was rife in these ancient these ancient existences, because they were devoid of God. And that's why even if you look at in the Old Testament, there's specific references to, for example, the milk of a goat not being used to drown its offspring. And this is like everything in the Old Testament. You will often find how it's a foreshadowing of what's to come, and it's about the blood sacrifice, and the ultimate sacrifice was obviously Jesus. But it's another analogy to absolutely condemn abortion, which is completely normalized in Western civilization, in America, in the United Kingdom, and in everywhere in between across Europe. All of these people normalize the sacrifice of children, yet they find some ancient altar in the jungle, and it's supposedly some stark revelation that people were sacrificing children. They're still sacrificing children. Celebrities, like we've just seen, lauding themselves as heroines for going up and down in some bit of kit that I don't even know if it really did what they said it did. These are the people that advocate for this. They absolutely advocate for it. And what plagues me is increasingly we're seeing this culture of feminism, which leads to the child sacrifice, which leads to the self-worship. We're seeing that push into a remit, which is in some respects, certainly not in my opinion, but in some respects considered to be even conservative. And this is a very dangerous thing. And on my show, I guess it was last week, maybe on the Christian Nationalist Party show, we looked at some footage of Russell Brand basically saying to Americans that you guys need to find a way to accommodate varying perspectives to include people who identify as LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans. This man, who is being propped up as a conservative mouthpiece, is telling conservative Americans that they ought to find a way to be inclusive and to accommodate these people who are flagrantly sinning against God. We all sin against God, but these people are flagrantly living in their sin, and a sin that is described as an abomination. And this is what we see even in the conservative movement, is all of these practices, which we inherently know are abnormal. We inherently know that sacrificing children is wrong, but somehow finding an altar from which they used to throw children, because that was largely the practice in a lot of these structures, finding, or they would, kill them quite brutally. Finding a structure where they did that, hundreds or thousands of years ago, is somehow more shocking than the fact that millions of babies are being butchered and ripped apart in the womb and torn out of people's bodies every single day in, day out, every single day. There's not a day that goes by when a baby isn't ripped out of someone's womb. And so it's like they can't see. They can't draw the line. They can't draw the dots. Or do they not want to? Maybe they don't want to. But when you see it creeping in to spaces like conservative spaces, we have to speak out against it. I want to show you this video here. There's a video that's been doing the rounds, and it's the lady entitled it "The Feminism is a Vicious Lie," right? And she's spot on with this. Take a look.
Why would we take somebody who's talented in this field and really wants to make a difference and have the messaging to her be, you're really not that valuable unless you give it up and go into the home and only have a family and only raise a family.
So that also, let's stop. I don't, that wording, and only have a family, like it, that's over here in the corner, right? That's part of your job, but it's not all of your only raise a family. Like it's minimized. You're only going to raise a family. That's a feminist talking point. I'm sorry, but it is. It's the most important job. It's it, right? Because guess what? That career ambition, that's masculine energy. It is. We'll get to that in a second. It's masculine energy, and it eats away at your feminine energy. As you climb those ladders and you go into those rooms and have to negotiate contracts and have to show up on live TV and kick ass, your feminine energy goes, it has to. It has to. Or you don't survive in that world, in that Megyn Kelly world. And that world is vicious because I've been in it. I've been in those meetings. I've dealt with the agents. I've done it all. It is vicious. It rips at your soul as a woman. We're being dishonest if we don't share that.
And how many people do we hear speaking so candidly? This is the culture, isn't it? You're just going to be a mother. You're not, unless you're boss babing it and leaving your children with an absolute stranger and going to work for someone who doesn't care about you, right? Instead of staying at home. And I know that it's very difficult because, especially in today's economy, there are people that are living in parts of the world where it is so difficult, they feel they both have to work. Male and female, man and wife have to go to work in order to just survive. But Jim Dawson was giving a talk on this recently, and I thought, actually, I loved his response. I thought it was great. It reminded me of something that R.C. Sproul would say. Actually, it was really blunt. Someone was saying, what if you just can't afford to live on one salary? And he said, then move. He said, move. And I remember seeing R.C. Sproul say that once, actually. There was someone in a Q&A, and they said to R.C. Sproul, who is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is the greatest theologian in modern history. For those of you wondering who I'm talking about. And somebody in the crowd said to him, I can't find a decent church near me. The closest decent church to me is like a 2-hour drive. It's a 4-hour round trip. And what do I do? And he said, move. He said, or do a 4-hour round trip on a Sunday. What else are you going to do on the Lord's Day? And everybody laughed, and he said, I'm deadly serious. He said, move. And Jim said, I don't even think Jim's seen that, but they've got a kind of similar temperament. But Jim said the same thing. Someone said, oh, what do we do if I've only got, I can't remember where this talk was, but someone was saying, look, can't live on one income. He said, then move to a part of the country where you can, because it's vitally important that the nuclear family is forced back into normality, especially when we've got people that are calling themselves conservatives and are rubbishing women for the most important job that a woman can fulfill. And this is the outlook. And this was pushed even very subtly when I was a kid. Now it's right in your face. So I know that there are people that struggle. And I thought that it was, when he said that, I thought, well, the man's got a point. And I know people that have done this. I know people that have said, we want a big family. I want to be at home with the kids, and he needs to go to work and pay for us all. And so they've moved, and they've moved. I know some people that moved up into really far into Scotland, like Highlands. It's cold up there, right? So that they can have this lifestyle. If you're dedicated enough, you will do it. But when you've got conservatives or people that claim to be conservative rubbishing that setup, rubbishing the setup of the nuclear family, and basically insinuating or directly stating that a woman having children, leaving those children with a stranger so that they can then go to work and do all of the duties that are assigned to them by a stranger who doesn't care about them, right? Some man or woman who's running a company that's telling them do this, do that, do the other, and they don't care. You know, ultimately you're a number. They might be a decent person, they might be a nice enough person, but they're not your husband. They're never going to love you and cherish you like your husband. And so this narrative that women should get back into the workforce, otherwise they're worthless. And we see this all the time. I see, even especially in the right wing in the UK, it's a really weird thing. In the UK, I saw something that was shared the other week, and it was saying about Muslim women. And it was saying that X amount of Muslim women don't have a job. I can't remember what it was, but it was like some percentage, like 60% of Muslim women don't work. They're out of work. And I was like, yeah, because they've got like 4 kids. Now, I don't believe that I think the welfare state should be scrapped in the UK. I don't believe in the welfare state. I don't believe that these women should be given money by the state to have children. I think their husbands should be providing for them. But is it natural that these women are at home raising children rather than going to work? Absolutely. And it's strange because the people in the British right wing see this as like some terrible trait. Oh, look at them. They're not even going to work. Is it 84%, Ragnar? There you go, 84%. Now, listen, I know that a lot of those women are living on benefits. This is a completely separate argument. I would scrap the welfare state, scrap it completely. And look, there are millions of working, young, fit, white British males and females that are sitting at home doing absolutely nothing because they're getting benefits, right? I'd cut all of it. If you're able-bodied, go and work, go and contribute. And if you can't contribute, then you should be made to work to do like community service for the little pittance that you're given as benefit. You shouldn't be getting a lot of money. You should be getting tokens for food. And if you want money, actual physical money, go and get a job. It's really that simple. But telling women that they should be in work when actually what they're doing is raising a family is kind of ridiculous, right? But it shows, it's indicative of where we are and where the right wing has been pushed to. And we know that the Zionist agenda is obviously really focused on one demographic. That's why they're always talking about Muslims. And listen, I've done my fair share of talking about Muslims. I used to chase them down the street, So I know I can give you all the statistics about the Muslim community. But if there's one thing that they are actually getting right, I just wish they were getting it right in their own homelands and not in my homeland. But if there's one thing that they are actually getting right, it's the fact that they're breeding and they're having big families. Whilst right-wing conservative women are trashing other women for just being a stay-at-home mother, just being a wife. Is there a more important role than caring for your husband and your children? No, absolutely not for a woman. There are some women that are vocational. I am one of them, right? God doesn't make mistakes. I don't believe I'm in the situation that I'm in because it accidentally happened or I forced my way into it. God has a plan for all of us. This was his plan for me. So be it. Happy with that. God's will, thy will be done. But in the large part, women are not supposed to be in the workplace. And whenever they were, we saw they were in vocational roles. So women would be either nurses or maybe teachers. But even just 50 years ago, those kind of women that were in those vocational roles were generally women that weren't married, were generally women that didn't have children, or they were older. And so it's just we've gotten to an unnatural situation where the right wing are pushing the same feminist narratives as the left. And I want to show you this video. This is the real, I don't agree with this because people are saying that maternity leave should be like a year and the employer should pay for it. I actually don't agree with all that. I just don't think that women should be, I think women should be at home with their kids. watch this video. Look at this. This is the reality of the situation. And I know that a lot of people are going to watch this and say, oh, well, she's a feminist, so she deserves what she gets. And a lot of people will say that. But I look at women like this and I see them as victims of the agenda, just as much as I see men who are, you know, treated like second-class citizens when it comes to marriage and divorce and children. Very often men are completely downtrodden by the state, and they are treated like they're second class when women are propped up above them, especially when it comes to situations like custody and alimony and all of that. I totally agree with that. But I also see these women as victims of this agenda. Listen to what this woman has to say.
So today is my last day of maternity leave, and I go back to work tomorrow. And I just feel like I haven't had enough time with them. I know I got longer than a lot of women get with 3 months, but it just doesn't, I just don't feel ready.
I had a very high risk pregnancy because they shared a placenta. They were 5.5 weeks premature. We were in the NICU for several weeks. So you kind of feel a little robbed of that postpartum experience, and that does not get accounted into your maternity leave.
It's just like such an abrupt change that you're with your babies all the time, and then you pick them up from daycare and you might just get a few hours.
I just felt like so disconnected to them. I would get emotional. I would just like cry, like they're gonna forget me, or I would come home from work and like feel like they forgot me because they didn't like smile right away when they saw me. And I know they like didn't, but it's really hard to convince yourself that they don't.
I also love my career. I am proud of what I do, but there's always that mom guilt of you're not giving enough time to your kids.
There was the most visceral response from the stay-at-home moms, and it was far from supportive. If somebody else is going to raise your baby, how could you leave these babies? Save some money and stay home. You can make it work. Great that you can stay home, to each their own. I would have loved to prolong my maternity leave and maybe go back part-time, but that's just not our financial situation. And I don't think that's the average American woman's family situation either. We both have student loans, we have a mortgage, we have 3 mouths to feed. I hold the health insurance for our family. We just live in a world in America where, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to think about it, most people are 2-income families, and times are tough. This like whole pandemic and inflation, it's difficult. So many people from so many other countries like chiming in with their maternity and paternity leaves are. A lot of the European countries and Canada are 12 plus months for women. That's kind of more like the message I would love to like talk about and get across, is that could be a lot better in our country.
I just feel so honored to be their mom and to have gotten the past 3 months with them. So I'm really grateful for that. For all the working moms out there, you're amazing. You can't do it all, but you're doing the best that you can for your kids, and that's all that matters.
See how conflicted these people are. They literally cannot see how unnatural this is. So she's so conflicted. She's sitting there with, I saw someone say she hasn't got a ring on her finger. Mitch, I noticed that, but he had a ring on his finger. I think that maybe her fingers were just maybe swollen or something, because she talked about the fact that they both had student loans and a mortgage and all the rest of it. And Lady Matriarch absolutely hit the nail on the head. Your babies are your career. And people can say, well, that's easy for you to say, Jada, because you're in a vocational role and you're working every single hour that God sends. And I do, absolutely. And I don't have children. And if I did have children, I certainly wouldn't be in this position. I think it's it's ludicrous as well to go down this avenue of women saying that maternity leave should be a year. So the only positive thing about this, right, is that male employers, or any employer, but, you know, predominantly male employers, because it's mostly men that do employ people, are going to be loath to employ women if they think they are going to have to pay a woman to be absent from their role for an entire year. This doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. Look, I know the feminists are going to be screaming at the screen. It doesn't make sense. And I have to say, if I were back in business, I used to actually run businesses before I was in full-time vocational role, full-time extremism. I was very, very dubious about hiring women. Very dubious, because especially young women, you kind of know that the path that they're going to go down. Most young women, they want to start a family. They're going to be gone. They're going to be absent. You've got to train someone else. Then they want to come back. Then they need to be. And it is a lot of aggro. People can say, well, that's a terrible thing for a woman to say. Well, I actually hope that it has the desired effect of keeping women in the house, because you only have to watch that piece of footage to see how conflicted this woman is. She is laying there with her babies on her chest, crying because she is leaving them. And I would be the same, right? I would be exactly the same. I even like saying goodbye to my godchildren, although sometimes it's nice to hand them back. But you know what I mean? She's crying and she can't work out. Oh, but I'm so proud of my career. They are your career. We have been so brainwashed, and I, you know, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. You know, people here haven't been brainwashed, but society has been brainwashed, and it is. I find things like that really upsetting. I see that, and I feel bad. Rather than listening to her feminist outlook of wanting to prop up all the working mums, you can do this, and all of that, you know, boss babe mentality. No, I just look and think, you poor soul, you can't even see the internal conflict that is going on right now, because what you are trying to do is impossible and it makes no sense. You are going to have to either sacrifice your career or sacrifice motherhood, right? Not altogether, but you are not going to get those moments back of your children that someone else is going to experience. First steps, first words. Those tiny babies are going to be in the care of somebody else whilst you are in an office doing your thing, advancing your career, so that you can say, when those kids are grown and they can say to their kids, oh, my mum was a fantastic businesswoman. Just makes zero sense. None whatsoever. And it's tragic that this is being peddled on the right wing and in the conservative movement. And if there's one thing that, as a total and utter hypocrite, I can say to people, and in fact, it's not just hypocrisy. I mean, I know that people would say, you know, look, it is hypocrisy, you talking about motherhood and you're not a mother. I can say this from the standing point of a woman who didn't go down that road. And I think that more women who didn't, I meet a lot of women, and they're not in the position that I'm in, where they're vocational and they're involved in something that they've dedicated their life to. They've dedicated their life to, like, working in a bank. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not trying to make myself feel better here and try and excuse myself. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I could deal with that. I can deal with the fact that I didn't go through that natural motherhood process as a woman. I can deal with that because I'm involved in something vocational, and I'm heavily involved. It is my entire life, and it is all consuming, and anyone involved will understand that. If I was sitting here before you saying, well, I spent 25 years involved in, I don't know, construction, you know, big business, banking, running nightclubs, whatever, you know, whatever people dedicate all of their lives to, and look back and say, what was the benefit of that? We have to try and, like, reprogram people. And this is one of the things that within the Templars and the Christian Nationalist Party, we are very keen to do. And as a woman, it's something that I can speak to people about because I have first-hand experience of the other side of this, the other side. There's not enough women out there, because I suppose they don't want to be open to ridicule, but me, I don't care. I am very thick-skinned. There's not enough women out there saying, actually, you are being sold a lie. you are being sold an absolute lie, that your achievement in life depends on the advancement of your career. And you only have to look at that video to see that that is an absolute fact. So reject the feminists, especially when they try and claim that they're conservatives. It's beyond belief that anyone could claim to be a conservative and destroy the most important role. No mothers, no future. No mothers, no existence. It's as simple as that. The order of creation is set out in the Bible, and it's very clear, and it's for a reason. Why people think, it goes back to this celebrity culture, doesn't it? That people make themselves their own gods. They think they know better than God. That's what this all boils down to. There's one last thing that I want to show you today, and this is something that I feel so strongly about. I know I'm running out of time, but I have to show you before I go because I feel so strongly about this. Watch this short video, and there's a link that this girl's got, but I've also got our links. We have a petition running for this, but I want you to just quickly watch this.
There's a man named Rocky Shea Franklin out of Alabama, and he drugged and he overpowered and he raped a 12-year-old boy, and he filmed those assaults, and he uploaded 23 of those videos to Pornhub with titles that indicated this was abuse, like young, it said like Uncle Secret. I won't say the worst things, but it was clear. He was put in prison for 40 years for what he did. Police reached out multiple times to Pornhub to try to get those videos down. They were ignored for 7 months. Those videos stayed online, getting hundreds of thousands of views. That boy is suing Pornhub today. So he's one of those many victims suing Pornhub. But Rocky was a verified uploader. He had shown his ID. Right. They know who he is, but they didn't verify clearly, right? Like who's in the video. Victims were seeing it, and then they were starting to reach out to me. Sometimes on a daily basis. Victims said, I was exploited on Pornhub as a child, as a teen. I was raped. I was unconscious, and I was raped on Pornhub, and I begged to get those videos down, and I couldn't. All these stories started to come forward. Not only that, but whistleblowers from inside the company started to reach out to me and started to expose the inner workings of the company. I said, okay, well, I'll do that. So I just went on change.org. I started a petition, and instantly it started going viral.
So on change.org, you started a petition?
I started it there. Yeah,
okay. Now
it's at traffickinghubpetition.com. And today we have 2.3 million people who have signed the petition from every country in the world.
Let's go. We're going to get more. We got to get more. It's traffickinghubpetition.com.
Okay, so we have a petition running. Jim, I think, has spoken to you guys about this new initiative that we've got to try and recruit using social media. Social media is a fantastic way to reach people. There are a lot of people out there that are...
They're basically doing the same thing. I'm going to move on to the next one. I've been covering this a little bit. The child trafficking the other day, Harris and Gregory were on about this with me. I'm going to move on to the Supreme Court in England. They declared a woman is a real woman out there. Let me try to cue this up here. The right spot. Right about. Right there. All right. This is about the Supreme Court decision in England. That should be coming to the United States and Canada and all that. A woman is a woman. A man is not a woman. No trans man is a woman. So, there we go. This is from the other parts of the Templar report here, the British Freedom Party. I thought it'd be playing by now.
Hello, everyone, and I hope that the show has just started. I would have thought that the intro should have been running for a few more seconds. Slightly puzzled there, but I'm glad to be here. I just hope you're with me as well. So let me just dive into the chat. I know it's very early yet, so there won't be many people in, but just check that someone is seeing me. Brian, Marty, Hugo, or Ralph, are we working here now? Can you let me know?
It looks like in our chat that you have to refresh the page to see new comments.
From Las Vegas.
It looks like you have to refresh it.
I think we've got 1 or 2 Brits here, and of course many Brits. I know you good people work, so you simply cannot join me at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, but you come along later. You're all very welcome whenever you hit the channel. So what have I got to talk to you about today? Well, first of all, today is not just Wednesday. This used to be known in the proper Christian calendar as Good Wednesday, because it's the Wednesday of Holy Week. Also known as Spy Wednesday, because this was the day when Judas Iscariot went to the Sanhedrin, the Jewish religious leaders, and offered to betray Jesus. It's there in Matthew 26, verses 14 to 16. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests and said unto them, What will ye give me? And I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time, he sought opportunity to betray him. Why is this good? Because the things that evil men do, the things that the devil does, very often rebound upon them. So Judas Iscariot going and offering to betray Jesus Christ led to his crucifixion, which led to Christianity, the faith, and everything that has come since. It was absolutely essential that Jesus be betrayed so that he could make the sacrifice necessary to save the world or his believers from the sins. So hence it's good. Just as Good Friday, the day of the crucifixion, and a most appalling day for Jesus the man, but the vital day for the faith. So there you go. That anyway is what Wednesday is, and why it's special today. So who have we got? Kit Bear has just joined us as well. That's great to see you, Kit. And let us carry on. So what do I want to talk about? Yes, really big news earlier on today. The UK Supreme Court used to be known as the House of Lords, but of course they can't leave things like that alone. So it's now the Supreme Court, but it still has the legal power in this land and influence in all the Anglo-Saxon countries, as a matter of fact, through the way the legal system works. And it ruled today that women, the terms women and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman, i.e. a real woman, and biological sex, which is a huge victory for common sense, and it's being portrayed in the media as a victory for what they now call gender critical campaigners. Not for normal people, but just some special sort of campaigner. But anyway, it certainly is a tremendous day. 5 judges in the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the legal definition of a woman in the 2010 Equality Act does not include transgender women who hold gender recognition certificates. Now, in real terms, there's a bit of a problem about this because it suggests, the judges go along with the idea, that transgender women exist, that men who've either claim to be something different or have had themselves turned into eunuchs become women. So it would have been better if the High Court had simply said, we're not even Supreme Court, had said, we're not considering any of this nonsense, get out of it. Of course a woman is a woman and nobody else is. And you have freaky, weird, perverted or mentally ill men, that's a different matter, but don't dare call them women in any shape or form. So we don't need to say biological woman, we just say woman. Well, that's asking a bit too much, isn't it? So what is good is that they've said that biological women are one thing and transgender things with gender recognition certificates are entirely another, and they cannot claim to be women in law. This is a wonderful thing. It's a massive defeat for the Scottish government because this arose from an incident in Scotland where the Scottish government has said that transgender men pretending to be women can sit on public boards as part of the 50% quota set aside for women. Now, again, I don't believe in quotas for anybody, women, men, black, white, anybody. Everybody should be picked for any job out there, for anything out there, on grounds of merit and merit alone, or on the grounds that the person doing the picking or the people doing the picking want to pick them. If they want to pick all men, it's their business. If they want to pick all women, it's their business. If they only want to pick white men, it's their business. If they only want to pick black women, it's entirely up to them. It's not up to the rest of us or the law to interfere. But, you know where we are. And given that we are where we are, it's far better that where you have public boards where 50% of the places are set aside for women, 50% for men, that the women get their 50%. And that if a trans man wants to say, yeah, okay, I'm mistaken, I'm a man after all, then I'm afraid he'll have to sit on our side if he gets the job. But in fact, he can't get the job unless he's prepared to say, yeah, sorry, actually, I'm a man. And that at least is another good thing. So this was, it was one Lord Hodge was the main, not Margaret Hodge or any relation, told the court that the Equality Act was very clear that its provisions dealt with biological sex at birth and not with a person's acquired gender. It doesn't matter at all whether or not they hold a gender recognition certificate. So this is really a very good thing indeed. And it was duly celebrated. Here, by the way, is there you are, there's the Supreme Court there in the middle of central London. And it is, of course, a very, very ancient institution going back to the days of the Templars, as a matter of fact. Hence, it's known as the Inner Temple, the place where all the lawyers actually go and meet and so on, and where they have their chambers. It's very ancient, and it's the foundation point of British law and thereby the law of large parts of the world, as a matter of fact. Tremendous building, Victorian, I think, mainly crazed Victorian Gothic. But yeah, they've made this fantastic decision. So what have we got? Lady Matriarch has joined us, pointing out that trans is a broken man. Indeed, something of yours later in the show, Lady M, by the way. Many thanks for sending me the things you sent me. And yes, radio, party BFP, Starmer told the UK must repeal hate speech laws or lose the Trump deal. And the BFP moderator says, I hate Starmer, but he's our lawful prime minister. The USA needs to butt out of our business. Yeah, there's an interesting problem there, isn't it? That would be great if indeed Starmer could be forced to do the right thing. But from a nationalist point of view, it's wrong if someone out there is the one doing the forcing. So yeah, it's an interesting issue, that one. But anyway, let us press on, shall we? Women, of course, are not made here. Women are born. Now, put in mind of that particular slogan, because the women celebrating outside the court today, there's a one of their posters, women are born, not some bloke with a form. So these are some of the feminists who bought this case and are celebrating their victory, which is also, as a matter of fact, of course, a victory for all of us. Because this policy, it's this new position taken by the court, the judgment by the court, is going to affect policy making on gender in all sorts of fields, in sports, in the armed services, very important, in hospitals, as well as in women-only charities, access to changing rooms and so on. And Lord Hodge pointed this out. He said, as a matter of ordinary language, the provisions relating to sex discrimination, and especially those relating to pregnancy and maternity, and to protection from risks specifically affecting women, can only be interpreted as referring to biological sex. So it really is cut and dried, except of course to the trans freaks who are screaming blue murder about this. First out of the on the running tracks for this was the Scottish campaign group Scottish Trans. 5 years ago, you'd have thought that was Scottish Transport, but not anymore, no. They said, we're really shocked by today's Supreme Court decision, which reverses 20 years of understanding of how the law recognises trans men and women with gender recognition certificates. And in particular, there's one creature, here we are, this young lady. This is Ellie Gomersall, who's a trans woman, i.e. a bloke in a frock, in the Scottish Green Party. Yep, they are actually within the Scottish political system, and it has called on UK government to change the law to entrench full equality for trans people, because he says, quote, I'm gutted to see this judgment from the Supreme Court, which ends 20 years of understanding that transgender people with a gender recognition certificate are able to be, for almost all intents and purposes, recognised legally as our true genders. Well, no, sorry, Ellie, I don't know what his name was, Fred or whatever. Take the case, having a piece of paper to wave around doesn't make you remotely anything other than the sex you were born. And the most, if you have the full operation, it makes you a bloke without any bollocks. Sorry, folks, that's the blunt truth. Right, let's dive into the chat, see if anyone else is fresh. Brian Siddick is here. Good to see you. And as Kit Bear says, she is indeed, it gets to you, doesn't it? An attention-seeking lunatic. And Mickey, good to see you, Mickey. New name here for me. Hopefully the trans in women's prisons will now be moved to men's prisons where they belong. Absolutely so, unless, to be kind, they belong in mental institutions. Not sure about that one. Perhaps some do, some don't. Right then, let's carry on, shall we? Yeah, now this was the case got to the Supreme Court, partly with the help of a campaign group, Sex Matters, which was supporting 4 women of Scotland. And one Maya Forstater, who's actually with them, said, "We're delighted that the Supreme Court has accepted the argument of 4 women in Scotland and rejected the position of the Scottish government. The court has given us the right answer. The protected characteristic of sex, male and female, refers to reality, not to paperwork." Absolutely so. It's going to have a huge impact. Now, the UK government, Starmer and co, promptly turned around and said that they welcome this ruling because it brings clarity and confidence for women and those running hospitals, sports clubs, women's refugees, etc. Strange though, isn't it, that Keir Starmer was unable to say whether or not a woman could have a penis. So don't let them wriggle out of this. The Labour Party, this government, is fully in hock to the trans agenda, always has been and remains so. But particularly because they feel reform breathing down their necks in so many of their seats, especially in the north of England, they have to actually pretend now that years of the Labour Party campaigning for the T as well as the rest of the LGBT actually meant nothing, and really they're very, very pleased with this verdict. No, of course they're not. But anyway, there we go. So this is all great to see. And it has something very important. Oh, it's also joined by Paul Telford, who says, quite right, empty heads are easy to fill with muck. That's a very good point, Paul. Very good point indeed. So what does this mean for Christians and particularly for nationalist activists? Well, what's just happened, bearing in mind that this government didn't want to do this, if the government had wanted to say, look, men are men, women are women, and we can't have freak or pervert men pretending to be women and gate crashing their changing rooms, etc., etc. The government could have done that. The Tory government could have done that, but didn't. They all went along with it under the idea that, well, the Equality Act says that, you know, you've got to have these people who've got these certificates, etc., etc. Sorry, folks, there's nothing we can do. It's like when they used to blame the European Court, in fact still do, for their refusal to take effective action to protect our borders. They use these things as an excuse. And so the Equality Act, yes, it's a left-wing act. It was brought in by the Labour Party. The Tories could have got rid of it. They didn't. So it's the whole liberal political elite imposed the Equality Act upon us. And then leftists and pervert activists have pushed and pushed and pushed to get their interpretation of the Equality Act running through the law and the habits of this land. And they generally succeeded because nobody has pushed back until this group of feminist, lesbian, cropped-haired activists, women's activists, very angry about men muscling in on their patch, took this to court and had the judges look at the Equality Act and what it really means. Doesn't matter whether you think it's good or bad or bad in parts. They looked at the act, looked at what it meant, and decided that it doesn't mean that men with a certificate can claim to be women and get all the rights and benefits put aside to women under this act. But if that gaggle of lesbian witches hadn't bought that act, but bought that law, sorry, bought this challenge to the law, then we would still have the position where these trans freaks could do exactly what they wanted. So it's down to activism. And this case could have been bought, in fact, by nationalist activists, by Christian activists. It was bought by the lesbians because they're the ones with the particular skin in this game and with the money and the organizational clout and the willingness to lose warfare, instead of wasting their time and money fighting elections for years. The nationalists should have done this. Where are the nationalists? There's half a dozen nationalist parties out there at the moment. Some of them fight elections. Some of them claim they're going to fight elections. Some of them say, no, we don't fight elections. We build communities instead, all well and good, but not one of them does lawfare. To be fair, the English Democrats, when they functioned as an effective party under Robin Telbrook, they did do a little bit of lawfare, and when they did, they won several times. They won more often than they lost, and you can't expect to win every time you go to court. So one of the reasons that the liberals and the left have been, and for that matter, the ethnic minorities, have been able to use this law, which, yes, it's slanted in their favor anyway, but they've used it absolutely ruthlessly. They pushed way beyond what it actually says, and not one Christian nationalist, white nationalist, British nationalist has made the slightest bit of effort to push back using lawfare. Look, we're in a country which is basically governed by the lawyers, either through the legal system, through legal activism, through activist judges, or through the fact that most politicians either start their lives as trade union investigators and representatives, or as lawyers. Lawyers are massively overrepresented in the parliamentary system. Legal things matter in this country, but the nationalists aren't in the game. I can tell you this, that many actions which are used by sections of the British state are illegal under the Equalities Act. The action by the Electoral Commission, for instance, to take to themselves the right to say who could and couldn't register a political party, and to say that if you want to stand up for the indigenous native British, you can't even register a political party. That action was illegal. It could have been overthrown and stopped years ago by nationalists if they'd been organized and thought and thinking about and raising money for and putting money into lawfare. But of course they don't. Much of the discrimination against the indigenous people in this country, I'm telling you right now, is illegal under the Equality Act. They get away with it because nationalists aren't there fighting back. And if nationalists do get into this, and there's people out there raising easily enough money, the fortune that Patriotic Alternative, the gigantic fortune that Tommy Robinson and co have raised, Paul Golding, the vast sums of money these people have raised and simply frittered away. There's absolutely nothing to show for it, nothing whatsoever. They could have used a fraction of that money in lawfare, and we would already have significant rights for whites, to use the old BNP expression, which is actually much more easily got if you drop the white business, certainly if you drop the neo-Nazi loony business, and just talk about indigenous British, who can be English, Scots, Irish, Welsh, Scots-Irish, Cornish. Yep, we have rights, but you only get rights in a country dominated by the lawyers if you struggle and raise funds and fight and win cases and lose cases and win more cases and do it through the legal system. It's crucial. And until our people get there, our people will continue to be third-class citizens in our own country. Right, let me dive into the chat again and see what you good folks are saying. Kit, the ones who enforce the laws are the biggest lawbreakers. Quite so too. Kit again says they're a law unto themselves. They are, but they're more of a law unto themselves if the right side, nationalists and Christians, aren't also in the legal business pushing back. That's the thing. If in the end they so hate a pushback that people like us win something, and if they then change the law of the land to close it, well, then that's naked tyranny, and you force them to native tyranny. And everybody who was involved in and was heartened by that victory will get that bit more education about just how rotten the system is and the people who run this country. And a few more of them will understand that actually the only way really to defend yourself from this thing is to separate out as far as you possibly can. But winning and then losing things is part of that awakening process. So even when you lose, if you're doing the right things, you don't actually lose. Your people gain in experience and determination, and in the understanding that we have to look after ourselves, because they will not. Paul says MP should be made to tell us what they spend their expenses on, never mind poor people on benefits. Yes, they should indeed, but that is a different story. Mr. Thomas asks, if most of the judges are liberals, even with nationalist solicitors, what chance have we got at winning cases? Well, Mr. Thomas, if you can get it up to the Supreme Court, so you can get at the lower level, the district courts, you can get the activist judges as well, coming out with the wrong things. But you get something up to the Supreme Court, and they have brilliant minds, and they apply the law. So if the Equality Act has a gap in it whereby the English or the Scots, the Irish or the Welsh or whatever.
For those over on Wimpkin, if you refresh the page, you'll see the comments of other people. They aren't showing up like until you refresh the page, and then you make a comment. Sometimes those don't show up until you have to refresh the page. There's a little bug in it right now.
Whatever, have rights.
It's over on Wimpkin.
And if you take that to the court and say, look, this is the case, all they can do is to say, yes, that is the case. And then your door is open for you. So it's not a panacea, this, but we'd be far, far better off if we were at least fighting like that bunch of crop-haired lesbians have just done. They fought and they've won. And let's face it, the liberal elite, the transhumanist elite, the whole trans thing is very important to them. So if we had a legal system which was completely in the pockets of the Klaus Schwabs of this world, the court decision of today would not have happened, because this is it's a massive blow, not just to the trans freaks. They're really only just useful cannon fodder, useful idiots for the global elite who see the transgender thing partly as a crucial part of their war against God, but also as it's like a gateway drug, that if you can change your gender, your sex, and so on, if everyone accepts it, then they can mess around with human beings. They can produce something which is half man, half computer, and it becomes a man, etc., etc. It's very important to them, and it was rejected by the Supreme Court. So while I'm not saying that the English legal system is run by and full of good people, I'm saying that there is still some sense, some decency, and a very strong understanding that they must obey the law, and they must interpret the law, and everyone else then has to do it. Right then. So Matthew A says they're probably walking back the crazy stuff until more Europeans get replaced. Well, yay and nay, because actually, if you totally replace the Europeans with third worlders, you certainly wouldn't have trans, you wouldn't even probably have gay rights. How many trans activists run around in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Nigeria or Absurdistan, any of those places? Yeah, a big fat zero. It's white liberals are the problem, Matthew. White liberals are the problem with this, not the immigrants. Simple as that. Immigrants bring all sorts of other problems with them.
He's right about the white liberals. Absolutely right.
Look and see what we're going to be talking about next.
The ones that are all messed up in the head.
Very interesting thing. Now, Lady Matriarch sent me this piece of news today, a new report showing that there's a dramatic increase in young people attending church. And I'm talking really dramatic. It's quite so astounding. I went and had a look at this report. Here it is. It's called The Quiet Revival. It's done by the Bible Studies Group. The Bible Society. It's been around for hundreds of years, this Bible Society. And they've done this study. Like I say, they've come out with the fact that there's a huge swing to people going to churches. They found that in 2018, so what, 7 years ago, just 4% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they attended church at least monthly. Now, they're only talking about churchgoers. They're not talking about people going to mosques and so on. There's no confusion like that. This is purely people attending Christian churches. 2018, it was 4% of 18 to 24-year-olds. And today it's risen to 16%, with young men increasing from 4% to 21%, and women from 3 to 12%. So particularly amongst young men, but even amongst young women, the number going to church since 2018 has quadrupled. Now, this is an astounding thing. The co-author of the report, who's one Dr. Rhiannon McAleer, says that it shows that what people believe about church decline is no longer true. She says these are striking assumptions that completely reverse the these are striking findings that completely reverse the widely held assumption that the church in England and Wales is in terminal decline, she said. Now, the Church of England is in drastic decline. It's still falling through the floor, the number who attend Church of England services. The most significant broad-based growth is...
Harris, are you seeing my comments? Harris, are you seeing mine?
Now, any traditional Christian has got all sorts of problems with the Pentecostal church, but better that people go to church than they go to a mosque or they go to nightclubs and do all sorts of horrible things. It's better than nothing. Simple fact is there are 2 million more people attending church in Britain now than there were 6 years ago. It really is enormous. We have a graph for you actually here. Now I can hear you thinking, especially I know several of you, oh, this is because it's all Africans, right? Well, we'll deal with that possibility in a moment. But don't worry, it isn't. So here's the rise in regular church going. And this is broken down by age group. Percentage of age group population who describe themselves as Christians and go to church at least once a month. And the light blue was from 2018. The dark was actually last year. So it's probably even more then. So the average has gone up from 8 to 12. Among old people, that's 65 plus, it's gone up from 14% to 19%. Now you might expect that because when people get to that sort of age, they start to think about dying and they all of a sudden get religion. But look at the other end, down here on the left.
It's kind of like USA, kind of similar.
4% in 2018, up to 16% now. The 25 to 34-year-olds have gone up from 4% to 13%. The 35 to 45-year-olds have gone up from 5% to 8%. Only amongst the 45 to 64-year-olds, 2 age cohorts there, has the number going to church gone down. Amongst the young people, it's actually an explosive growth. Really something quite remarkable. Now, we need to dig into this a bit more. The report does say, and it welcomes the fact that church is also more ethnically diverse, with 1 in 5 people, just under actually 19%, coming from an ethnic minority. This is interesting. Close to half of young black people aged 18 to 34, in fact, 47% of them now attend church at least monthly. So undoubtedly, the huge number of Africans who've arrived over the last few years since Brexit, they were attending church back home in Africa, and they're still attending church now. It's another one of these pointers which I've been saying, that don't think because we're being swamped, because we're becoming a minority, don't think we're all about to become Muslims. Yeah, you see the point? Because yes, these Africans shouldn't be here. We're robbing Africa of many of its best young people, its best educated young people. They're needed there. We shouldn't be bringing them over here as cheap labor. It's the ultimate form of imperialist aggression and exploitation, as a matter of fact. But since they are here, it's worth noting that they're not Muslims. They are Christians. So we might have all sorts of problems. I tell you, we will have problems if they send their youngsters, their little kids they've got running around now, age 3 and 4, if they send them to ordinary state schools in 10 or 15, 16 years time, we'll have a further explosion of juvenile delinquency as those decent young black kids become NIGGAs. That's the way it goes. It'll be a terrible thing. But at present, we haven't got that problem. And whatever they are, they will not add to the Islamist problem. But anyway, it's come back to, so among 18 to 54-year-olds, 1 in 3 come from an ethnic minority. Right? But there's still 2/3 don't. And the rise isn't just coming because lots of young blacks go to church. And young whites haven't changed their habits. Among young white men, it's gone up from 3%, sorry, from 4% to 18%. It's a huge, huge increase. Right? Get that again. The rise in white attendance is up from 3% to 18% among young men. So on the chat here last week, actually, one of you, I've forgotten who it was, said that he'd just spoken to two young men who'd said they were going to church. That reflects that one little, personal interaction reflects a huge change in our society. It's absolutely enormous and very, very important. What else have we got on this? Yeah, let's talk about the impact of this now. Hold on. Let me just go in and see what you're thinking of this, shall we? British Freedom Party. Yes, many young folks are getting religion. Just watch out for Tommy getting in onto grift. There's plenty of that already, actually. And Hugh de Cadea, great news. I take my kids and to their friends every Sunday. Good for you. Matthew A. Anecdotally, at my church, 1/4 of the members joined after the COVID madness, and all are between the ages of 20 to 40. That really is something. Lady Matriarch also points out, I have to hope so, some of those young men are going to church because they're looking for decent women. Yeah, and they've got far more chance of finding them there than finding them in a nightclub or anywhere else for that matter. Somewhere in sports might be a good idea, but again, you've got a possible feminist problem there. So what's the impact of all this? Just before we move on, got a little picture here, actually another graph. Is it a graph? No, it's not a graph. Impact. Right, 75% of churchgoers agree their life feels meaningful compared to 49% of non-churchgoers. And actually, particularly amongst the young women who go, they got a massive difference in terms of the number saying that they have mental problems, which is a horrifying proportion of young women who don't go to church, and very, very, very much lower amongst those who do. So it's particularly good for the mental health of women. Anyway, 75% agree their life feels meaningful compared to just under half of non-churchgoers. 69% of churchgoers say they feel hopeful about their future compared to 46% of non-churchgoers. Now that's a very important thing. I'll tell you for why. Those two left ones, meaningful and hopeful for the future. People who don't have a meaning in their life and don't have any hope for the future or in despair about it tend not to have children. People who feel happy in their lives and hopeful about the future tend to have children. So this is something which is going to go on generationally, because the people who are getting into church will have kids. The people who don't will tend not to. And because all these things are actually heritable to a large extent, the next generation will be more religious, more traditional than the last generation. Got to be good. Finally, on the right-hand side, 55% of churchgoers agree they feel close to the people in the local area, compared to 28% of non-churchgoers. So it's getting on for double there. It's a very significant difference. Getting on for double of churchgoers feel close to people in their community. And as we often tell you, you're not going to survive what's coming to the Western world if you're alone. You're not even going to survive it if you're just a family. You survive it as part of a community, either an intentionally built community, either geographic or of common interests, or for that matter, just geographic. And the Christians are up there benefiting from being part of a community and also helping to make our communities stronger, a little bit more resilient, a little bit more tougher. It really is it's a great piece of news. And I thank Lady M for drawing that to my attention. It's not the sort of thing which really is in the mainstream papers because liberals don't like to see it. So there you go. Now, what are we on? 17:37. So we're getting a bit pushed for time. Let me just see what you're thinking again here. Yep, God bless it, says Michael Wells. Another new name to me. Good to see you, Michael. Good to see you here. G. Thomas, my first name is George. Right, couldn't reply the other night because I had to tend to my newborn twins. Hey, Fantastic. Absolutely. Good for you, George. Good for you. I still had to think of you as Gordon. I'm sorry, just because it was my granddad's name. Hold on a minute. Have I got the picture here? Hold on. Yes, I have. Wait a second, folks. Wait a second. Ah. This is my grandfather, Gordon Thomas. What's happened here? Oh, I see. Of course, I know what's happening here. Let's go to StreamYard. Right. This was him in his Army Cadets uniform at school, age 17 at the start of 1918. Can you imagine how his parents, he was an only child, can you imagine how his parents felt seeing their boy proud in his officer's training corps uniform a few months from being drafted to the hellhole slaughter of the Western Front? Fortunately for him, the war ended, and for them, the war ended just before he came of draft age, which is one of the reasons that I am here. Right, anyway, George Thomas, if I think of you as Gordon, my apologies. Great to have you here. Right, I want to dive into one more thing for now. Till receipts. What on earth is Nick talking about till receipts for? Has he gone completely and utterly mad? We're not interested in these things. Well, he should be, because I'm here to tell you that till receipts are literally poisonous. Not in a metaphorical sense, in an actual sense. You see, they work because they're covered in BPA, which is bisphenol A, BPA. And it's in most of the plastics that we use every day, including plastic bottles and food containers, canned goods, and in cash registers. And it's on the receipts because actually things aren't printed on those receipts. The paper is blank, but it's heat sensitive and it turns black when it's heated up. And it does that because it's got this BPA on it. Now, BPA has a structure which resembles natural estrogen. And in fact, it used to be used as a medication to treat menopausal women in the 1930s. But then they realized that's not a good idea, in fact, because it's rather poisonous, and it became used in plastics instead. And it binds to estrogen receptors in cells and induces all sorts of inappropriate responses, such as increasing cell proliferation, which promotes the development of tumors. It gives you cancer. It also makes all sorts of animals it's been tested on infertile. And there's a review by one Vicky Marlant I was looking at, who's an environmental toxicology researcher at Simon Fraser University, came up with a damning and widespread finding that many of these environmental contaminants impair reproduction in fish, amphibians, that's frogs to thee and me, birds, mammals, and humans, reducing their chances of producing viable offspring. It's absolutely horrific. And I've got a very short explanation here, video, to show you, which I will do. There's time to do this. It's only a shorty. Well worth looking, as someone who knows more about it than I do tells you what the problem is. It's a shorty off of YouTube. Have a look at this.
Receipts are thermal paper. Essentially, they're coated with BPA. There's a thermal reaction that happens when heat is applied to the BPA. It prints text on the receipt without actual ink. If you ever see like a white coating on the receipt, that's BPA. I was in the airport coming here. The guy that was like handling the receipt, he's like, "Do you want the receipt?" I'm like, "No." And I saw him take it out and put it in the trash. There's this huge line of people.
They're doing that 500 times a day.
Exactly. And I looked at the guy and I was like, "I just want to tell you that these receipts are lined with endocrine disruptors." I couldn't not say something. It's been correlated with a decrease in testosterone. It's like, you need to wear nitrile gloves. Nitrile gloves can stop people from absorbing it. Any kind of cashier, anyone that's handling a receipt multiple times a day, highly recommend they wear nitrile gloves. Latex doesn't do that. Also, if you wear cream or hand sanitizer, it's been shown to increase the dermal absorption of BPA by 100-fold. 100x absorption.
Wow. Do bear in mind that this problem with BPAs on receipts, till receipts, is only a tiny fraction of the BPA problem. We're being poisoned with it across the board. The only way to seriously deal with it, or try to deal with at least some of it, to mitigate it, apart from not handling till receipts, you want your receipt? No, thank you. And you shouldn't touch it either. Get yourself a water filter which filters out such chemicals, i.e. sadly quite an expensive one, and stop drinking out of plastic bottles. It's also unwise even to drink out of cans because it's the same sort of problem. But plastic bottles are particularly bad. You shouldn't be drinking Coke and all this muck. Brother Dowson in his shows, occasionally he sneaks over, he has a little sup of Coke. Jim, if you're watching this, you shouldn't be doing it. It's bloody poison for your body anyway. It's horrible stuff. Rotting your teeth is only the tiny thin end of an enormous poisonous wedge. But certainly stop drinking out of plastic bottles, stop heating your food in microwave containers, use good old-fashioned crockery, eat proper meals with your family from proper home-cooked food, and you'll avoid a lot of this. But getting away from poisoned water, and it's all poisoned if it's municipal, that is a very important starting point. Right, I'm going to have to leave you now, other than to say that I almost did 2 health things today. Actually, I thought it was a bit excessive. I've been looking also at the impact of radiation waves from things such as mobile phone masts, which I used to think was, I've looked at it a bit, just seen a bit, and I thought, oh, this is rather wacky. This is one of those conspiracy theories that is based in nonsense, not worth looking at. No, I was wrong. The radiation in 5G is going to be even worse. It's far, far worse than anything that's come before, and these things are very clearly implicated in all sorts of the modern problems in our world, from cancer to autism. It really is shocking. So please join me next week when I will explore that further with you. Until then, I'm going to leave you now with a reminder, of course, that you should be here on Purge TV tomorrow at 4 p.m. to watch the latest edition of the Templar Report. Jim, to join Pastor Dowson on Sunday, also over there on the Templar Report for the Sunday service, if you can't get to a church of your.
Yep, they do a pretty good show. It's important to keep an eye on what's going on in the world too, because what happens there first is what's coming here. So I believe Vivi Vixen played this one, a part of this one. I was going to play the whole thing about the brainwashing our kids. Maybe she did play it all, but I only seen part of it when it was on her show. In case you didn't catch it all, I'm going to play it now. Then I'm going to go on to the Letitia James stuff with the New York Attorney General stuff and all the money thing that's going on there. And after going after Trump for the same thing she claimed Trump that she is actually doing, actually to the point where she claimed on some of the forms that she was married to her dad, which used her dad to get these loans through the government and all that kind of stuff, and a whole bunch of stuff, grants, all that kind of crap. Here we go. Oh, it didn't open up. There we go.
You're saying they're brainwashing. Okay, you're saying these people that are experts in
doing it for
brainwashing
years.
is using the Department of Education to brainwash our children.
Yes.
What are they after? Why are they doing it?
Well, if you want to move a country from a free individualistic economy,
which we have.
Yes, or had.
Or had, okay.
To a planned economy, you have to do it through the schools. You have to dumb down and brainwash, change the attitudes and values. You have to completely, social engineering has to go on constantly. And many teachers know what I'm talking about. And people are going to say, well, when did this start? And who on earth ever did this? Why would a plan like that be allowed to be carried out?
That's right.
Well, then you have to go back to 1934, which I will do, and we have to go to the three-pronged fork, okay? So I do think that the watershed year, although you can go back to the early part of the century when the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation were deeply involved in education, and that it was decided then that Carnegie would deal with the international part and Rockefeller domestic. But then we moved on to 1934, and this was after World War I. And there were these educators many of them going back and forth to Russia, very admiring of the new system in Russia, the communistic system. And they wanted to put it in here in the United States. And so the Carnegie Corporation that had always been involved in, trying to get us into world government after the League of Nations and all in 1917, they still had this goal. And of course, world government will be communism. I mean, it's really international socialism. That's what Lenin called it. So they've always wanted this. And
the Department of
interestingly enough,
Education today is going along with
yes,
that?
absolutely. Yes. And so in 1934, the Carnegie Corporation produced, it took 4 years, they commissioned the American Historical Association to put together a study of the social studies. And they came up with lots of volumes, but I have one little volume, Conclusions and Recommendations for the Social Studies. And basically that little one is an original book. I wish I'd brought it with me. Too bad, but I don't even dare let it out of the house. It's so important. It called for changing the United States through the schools from a free individualistic economy to a socialist, collectivized, planned economy in the New World Order.
It says that in the book?
Yes.
And that book was written when?
In 1934.
By who?
It was the Carnegie Corporation paid for it. The American Historical Association put it together. And
can people get that book in the library?
No. No, they can't. But I have quotes in my book, from it. But from that time on, Carnegie Corporation consistently, without any hesitation whatsoever, didn't run into any obstruction, poured its money, its tax-exempt money, which we make possible for them to have, into changing American education. They funded let's go on to the 1945. They're deeply involved. Alger Hiss was deeply involved with the Carnegie Corporation. He was a accused Soviet agent. They didn't get him on it, but they got him on libel. But most people do think that Alger Hiss was a Soviet agent. He was Carnegie. And they were very instrumental in getting the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed, which, as I said before, changed education from knowledge, content-based, academic, to performance-based behavior. And from that time on, because that was necessary for what we're looking at now with school to work agenda is the planned economy is performance-based.
So they're training workers.
They're training
not thinkers, not leaders.
Exactly. So Carnegie, after that study, then we went to the world, we went into the United Nations, which of course was essential. And then at that time, you had a general, Buck Chisholm, a Canadian general psychiatrist, who was a very close friend of Alger Hiss's. And he gave a speech in 1945 to the World Health Organization, which basically recommended getting rid of the conscience.
Wow.
Yes. And he said we would do it through the schools. We would retrain the teachers to be little psychiatrists. And what happened was that the average American educator at that time was not about, in 1945, to even listen to something like that.
Right.
And so nothing happened until the watershed year, again, another watershed year, 1965, when the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed, and we moved then from academics to behavior change. And the behavior science teacher education program was funded.
But how did Congress allow that to happen?
Well, you'll see in the book, John Ashbrook, who died, unfortunately, Congressman Ashbrook, who I dedicated the book to, he spelled it all out. He told the whole Congress exactly what it was. He said it is an international system they're looking at. They're going to change the behavior of the children. They're going to change the teachers' training. They're going to do everything. He told them everything.
And they didn't believe him?
No, they just well, you know what goes on.
Yes,
it's still going on, right? So anyway, they passed that in 1965. The teachers were retrained. All of these horrible programs, right? Mm-hmm. By 1968, the money had gone into all of these programs to get rid of the conscience, basically. Drug ed, all these programs, parents, really, when you see education hanging on the end of drug education, sex education, critical thinking education, red flag. You don't have reading education, writing education, math education, or we didn't used to. When you see education hanging on the end of something, except for driver's ed, which I think is probably pretty neutral, that means watch it. Because those programs, I've never seen one of those programs that was based on absolutes, right and wrong.
But the parents of the children today have gone through that program. So
Yes.
they've already been brainwashed. So they're not going to believe
Well,
you.
yes, they do believe me. Many of them call, and when I do radio interviews, they'll call in and say, I went through all of that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And of course, the teachers know. And many teachers do not like that, did not ever want to do it. Behind closed doors, they did their own thing. Now they're not going to be able to get away with it because they're going to be required, due to the standards that are being set and the accountability, the whole what's going on in Washington now with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act is nothing but brainwashing. And people, you hear standards and accountability and flexibility, all of this. Basically, the goal has nothing to do with academics. It has to do with training little, as you said, little busy little workers, little worker bees, to have the right attitudes and values towards internationalism, giving up our sovereignty, the needs of the group versus the individual. You know, they have all the group grades now, and
Do they actually
cooperative
ever start
learning.
talking about being a change agent, how to stop teaching people about basic civics, what the Constitution says, limitation of government? I mean, did they get into that?
No, I don't recall that, but I do know that I've seen I attend a lot of in-service things too, you know. So I have seen and heard, you know, how are we going to get away from, and that's in the book. Actually, there's a very interesting article in the New York Times in the early 70s about getting rid of the teaching of American history.
You're kidding.
Oh, no, not early 70s. New York Times article in the book. And it says that, yes. And we're not going to talk about George Washington anymore. We're going to focus on the world, because you have to get these world-minded students, or else they're going to rebel. If you want to put the Americans under a global management system or whatever it is, be very careful you don't teach them the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Don't let them have any history, because they are going to object when this system is taken away from them. But they won't now. You could take the Constitution away from the American people right now, and they wouldn't care, because they don't even know what it is. They don't know what it is.
They don't know what it is.
It protects them. That protects their rights. The reading problem. If you're so dumbed down, if you can't read, I've always said you can't defend yourself.
That's right.
You can't do anything. I mean, you are really at a tremendous loss. You are totally handicapped, worse than losing both legs if you can't read. They can take you right through the schools, 12 years without reading, just total brainwashing through visual, a lot of visual aids now with technology.
So they're trying to make people weaker readers?
Oh, of course. Yes, that's why they had the whole language for so long.
Which is I always thought was very dumb.
Yeah, it is pretty dumb. I think that some teachers, a really good teacher with whole language and an understanding of the traditional phonics, I don't mean direct instruction, which is Skinner, the Skinner phonics, but a good teacher who understood phonics well could use a whole language program quite well, because there are some things about whole language I like, you know, where the children are really immersed in a lot of good literature. Sometimes it's not so good, and so it depends on the teacher. But anyway, the dumbing down was absolutely deliberate, and you don't even have to go through all of the documents that I have in my book, but just ask yourself, why is it that last week the Senate voted in the House on the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it comes to something like, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's I think it's $100 billion. It's $100 billion a year. And we have children who can't, we're at the bottom of the list internationally, academically, and we're spending $100 billion. We will be, because it's reauthorized for 7 years. It's not quite that. I have.
Folks, we have some massive breaking news pertaining to Attorney General Letitia James from the state of New York. Now, you may remember about 3 months ago, we did some reporting here at LFA TV that said that she was guilty of mortgage fraud, that she was literally misstating how many different apartments were in these buildings that she bought, because if she had 5 or more, she wasn't eligible to receive these special reductions in interest payments. So what she did is that she claimed that she had less than 5 dwelling units in this massive apartment building that she bought years ago. And we're talking back in the early 2000s. And it ended up opening her up to be eligible for these, different grants and different loans, special loans that said that she couldn't balloon up to a certain interest payment, saving her hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was mortgage fraud number 1. And then about a month later, we also talked about mortgage fraud number 2, where she was basically, getting property and selling it to her father for $1 and claiming that she wasn't really had any ownership in it, but she really did. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another smoking gun. And that is this. Letitia James has a Virginia property, a very, very fancy, expensive piece of property in Virginia, a home. Well, in August of 2023, she signed over the special power of attorney to her sister-in-law in order for her to be able to have, be privy to information and make payments on her behalf and get tax information and stuff like that. Well, in that filing, dug way down deep, hidden way down deep, is an actual declaration of Letitia James, Attorney General of New York State, in August of 2023, that her primary residence is that Virginia home. Now, there's a problem with that because New York State law 31D mandates that a public official is an inhabitant of the state. And the moment that a public official becomes not an inhabitant of the state, then their office becomes vacant. Letitia James, in her own writing, in her own declaration, in her own signature, in her own words, officially declared that her primary place of residence was this Virginia home at 604 Sterling Street. Unfortunately for her, you can't be an attorney general for the state of New York if your primary residence is officially declared to be another state. So more mortgage fraud by Letitia James. Ladies and gentlemen, continue to follow LFA TV for more on this. We are hot on Letitia James's trail. It seems like everything that she was guilty of, she was trying to point the finger at Donald Trump for. And it's finally catching up to her. Let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Letitia James, we're coming for you.
Trump administration accusing the New York Attorney General of mortgage fraud. Letitia James faces possible prosecution after feds claim she falsified loan applications. Eric Shawn is live in the New York City newsroom with the latest. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Dana. Well, she was the prosecutor who won a $454 million civil fraud case against President Trump. But now the Trump administration is turning the tables on her for the very same thing. New York State Attorney General Letitia James now faces a criminal referral from the Federal Housing Finance Agency, accusing her of fraud to get lower mortgage rates. James, whose public salary is $222,000 a year, has obtained home loans for several properties with claims that are apparently false. In 2023, papers show she claimed a house in Norfolk, Virginia, as her primary residence. That qualifies for a lower mortgage rate. But at the time she's been serving in public office in Albany, New York, that's 500 miles away. She bought another building with her father as co-signer, calling herself his wife. And the referrals also show that she bought this brownstone in Brooklyn, New York, but misrepresented the number of units in it. That lowered the mortgage rate there, too.
Recently, New York Attorney General Letitia James has been accused of mortgage fraud, with Federal Housing Finance Agency Director William Polt submitting a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. Documents indicate that James allegedly falsified residency documents to obtain a low-interest loan when purchasing a property in Virginia under the claim of it being her principal residence in 2023. Additionally, it has been revealed that since 2001, James has consistently misrepresented a 5-unit residence in Brooklyn as a 4-unit property in order to qualify for favorable rates under the Federal Home Affordable Modification Program. Another controversy pertains to her 1983 joint home purchase with her father, where they mistakenly labeled their relationship as husband and wife. It is noteworthy that on the same day of the criminal referral, her office announced a preliminary investigation into potential insider trading related to the Trump administration's suspension of tariff policies. As of the time of publication, the Department of Justice has not commented on the criminal referral.
Let me get back on the stage. All right, this third one, actually, let me move that and bring the other one up because it's a link. This third one's a pretty good one, actually. The guy does a breakdown of Pam Bondi having Letitia James on trial or on the stand. You can't have video inside the courtroom, so what he does is he's reading some of the testimony. So it's actually pretty interesting, and he talks about what was happening in the courtroom as it goes and all that. Let me put this on screen. So this is pretty good. So hopefully you've maybe heard this guy before. I've heard him do some other ones before, so I got to rewind it just a few seconds here. Here we go.
That is laundering your tax dollars in broad daylight, and no one's stopping her.
He's reading from
that was the first sentence in the encrypted email
courtroom
that landed
stenographer
on Pam Bondi's desk.
and
No subject line, no sender name,
editorializing.
just one attachment, a file titled DOGE_001.pdf. Letitia James had been playing God with federal funds for years, arming her ideological crusade with your money, your trust, and your silence.
Now remember, she listed her dad and her as having the properties together as if her dad was her husband. So this is a total outlie on the forms and all this and that to get government money. She knew how to play the system. So wait until you see.
Sanctuary perks, DEI slush funds, hotel suites for illegals with vegan tamales and halal burritos. Yeah, that's where the money went. But she slipped up because one man, just one, was crazy enough to follow the digital footprints straight to the belly of the beast. And no, it wasn't the FBI. It sure as hell wasn't Merrick Garland. It was Elon Musk. He didn't need a badge, didn't need a warrant. All he needed was a login. At 2:14 a.m., buried inside a secure server room in DC, the glow of 6 high-res monitors lit up Elon's face. No chaos, no drama. Just click, click, pause, a sharp inhale. Jesus, they're not even trying to hide this ST anymore, he muttered, eyes scanning a flowchart labeled Federal Equity Grant Allocations, FY 2024. It read like a parody. Funds for Urban Emotional Wellness Recovery? Approved. $14.2 million for DEI initiatives at a public preschool where 3-year-olds learn about systemic bias? Rubber stamped. $250 million in block grants labeled Community Reentry Resources? Rerouted to cities with open border policies and zero ID requirements? No way this is legal, Elon said under his breath. No way in hell. And the deeper he dug, the dirtier it got. What started as a peek became a full-blown excavation. He wasn't just looking at waste. He was looking at intentional ideological engineering, disguised as budgeting, DEI, ESG, climate equity, gender justice task forces. Whatever buzzword they could slap on a check, they did. It was a taxpayer-funded woke fest. And guess which state showed up in every funding trail? New York, of course, every fucking time. He leaned back, cracked his knuckles, and hit send. The message went out, one recipient only, Pam Bondi. Former Attorney General, legal pit bull, zero tolerance for BS. It was 6:03 a.m. when her encrypted laptop pinged. She was halfway through her second black coffee and a report on drug trafficking in sanctuary cities. The subject line? You're gonna want to see this. She clicked. She scrolled. She went dead silent. My God, she whispered. They're actually doing it. They're laundering ideology through federal dollars. Now, Pam wasn't the screaming type. She didn't storm press conferences or cry for TV cameras. But when she saw Musk's findings, when she saw just how deep this thing ran, something in her clicked. We're done playing nice, she said aloud. No more sugarcoating. No more warnings. I'm cutting their damn money off. And just like that, the first chess piece moved. Quietly, deliberately. The left wouldn't see it coming. And Letitia James, well, she was about to find out what it feels like when someone flips the table instead of playing along. So no, This isn't just another story about budgets and bureaucracy. This is about the war beneath the headlines, the money they take, the lies they sell, and the bastards who smile while they do it. You ready? Because this file, the Doge file, doesn't just expose corruption. It proves they were daring you not to notice. By sunrise, Pam Bondi was no longer whispering. She was standing at the podium like a prosecutor at Judgment Day, staring dead into the camera as if daring the country to blink. Strike one, Illinois. Strike two, New York. And if you think there won't be a strike three, try me. No theatrics, no tear-jerking testimonials, just 6 words that detonated like a political warhead across 50 state capitals. You could practically hear the latte cups drop in every DEI office from Chicago to Albany. Behind her stood a wall of stern-faced federal officers, DEA, ATF, ICE, none of whom looked like they came for brunch. This wasn't a policy announcement. This was a national indictment. Pam didn't mince words. She declared unequivocally that the federal government would no longer fund states that treated the rule of law like a menu at Whole Foods, picking and choosing only what fit their personal flavor of justice. We will not subsidize states that ignore immigration law while handing out hotel rooms and taxpayer cash like it's a damn sweepstakes, she said. New York, you've been warned. Now you've been cut. Oh, the meltdown was immediate. MSNBC practically caught fire. And right on cue, as if the circus needed a ringleader, Letitia James strutted onto the airwaves beside Reverend Al Sharpton. Because nothing says fiscal integrity like a civil rights icon who once charged $500,000 to endorse a vice president. Letitia didn't address the actual numbers. She didn't refute a single dollar amount. No receipts, no reports, no rational rebuttals. Nope. She went for the old reliable. History, hurt, and hymns. This is an attack on the legacy of Dr. King, she declared, with the conviction of someone who just discovered injustice for the first time at a luxury press lounge in Manhattan. She called the budget freeze plainly unconstitutional, a gut punch to every marginalized community, and then, God bless her soul, invoked faith. Faith and fear, she said, voice trembling, cannot occupy the same space. Now, I don't know about you, but when a government official starts quoting scripture to defend misused funds, I start double-checking my wallet and my Constitution. I will not allow my ancestors to be shamed, Letitia continued, visibly shaking. I will fight this administration's illegal actions with the law as my sword and shield. Cue applause from a live studio audience that didn't exist. Cue Sharpton nodding like a bobblehead in a Cadillac. And while Letitia was busy performing spoken word poetry disguised as governance, Bondi had already filed the necessary paperwork to cut New York's funding pipeline clean in half. That same afternoon, Letitia signed the lawsuit. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from knowing that for the first time in a long time, she couldn't bluff her way out. Because here's the real kicker. The left had always counted on outrage to overpower accountability, but this time, the receipts were louder than the slogans. This wasn't about race, or history, or feelings. It was about billions of dollars and where the hell they went. And for once, someone had the guts to ask. You can't run a country on vibes. And Bondi, bless her bluntness, wasn't about to fund New York's fantasy of being its own republic with federal dollars. Next stop, Washington. Next move, a public reckoning. Because the truth had already been sent, and the Doge file was just the beginning. The sky over Washington was the kind of gray that warned of storms before they hit. Inside the Capitol, the air was thicker than weather. Security was doubled. The press lined the hallways like vultures waiting for a body drop. Congressional aides whispered, lobbyists lurked like ghosts, and the temperature of the entire East Wing hovered just below combustion. At exactly 9 a.m., the gavel dropped. This hearing is now in session, the chair announced, his voice slicing through the tension like a rusted blade. We are here to determine the legality of the executive decision to suspend federal funding to participating states. Let the record show, this is not a policy debate. This is a constitutional inquiry. Yeah, try telling that to the room. To the left of the chamber, Letitia James, dressed in a deep blue suit, lips drawn tight, chin raised like a war general just before the first volley. To the right, Pam Bondi, calm as ever, pen poised like a scalpel. Her eyes never left the notes in front of her. It was the showdown the media had been salivating over. And Letitia, of course, took center stage first. She rose slowly, deliberately, gripping her speech like a manifesto. "We are not beggars at the gates of federal power," she began, voice firm. "We are leaders of states, of communities, of justice." She paused, scanned the room. Cameras clicked. A few Democratic aides nodded solemnly, as if they'd rehearsed their concern. This administration is not cutting budgets. They are weaponizing them. They are not enforcing the law. They are choosing which people are worthy of protection and which programs deserve to live or die. And let me be clear, I will not be silent while they suffocate our values under the guise of fiscal review. She stepped forward, invoking Dr. King as if calling on a legal deity. "It was he who spoke of the stone of hope," she continued, her hand to her chest. "That stone still stands, and it gives me the strength to look this administration in the eye and say, I am not afraid of Donald Trump." The sentence hit the floor like a political Molotov. "I am not afraid of Donald Trump," she repeated louder. "I am not afraid of Donald Trump." Somewhere, MSNBC was already cutting a highlight reel. Letitia's voice cracked as she neared the end. "We are here not to defend corruption, but to defend the very spirit of American equality. What they call overspending, we call human dignity. What they call misuse, we call survival. This is not about grants. This is about power," she finished. The room didn't clap, but it was never meant to. It was meant to sting, to echo through headlines, to paint her not as a bureaucrat, but as a martyr. That is, until the cameras panned right. Pam Bondi hadn't moved. She was jotting something in the margins of a printed memo, calm, still, unshaken. She looked up slowly, met Letitia's gaze for the first time all morning, and raised one hand with clinical grace. The chair arched an eyebrow. "Ms. Bondi, a response?" Pam rose. No dramatics, no righteous fire, just razor-sharp clarity. "Permission to respond," she said flatly, "because I believe the record deserves more than poetry." She walked forward, heels clicking softly on marble. Justice does not come from volume. It comes from evidence. It does not bloom in televised sound bites, but in balance sheets, subpoenas, and the trail of where every dollar went. She turned slightly toward the press box. New York didn't get penalized for its values. It got penalized for ignoring federal law while using federal cash. Her voice sharpened, but never rose. "Let me be blunt. You don't get to break the rules and then demand more funding to keep doing it. Not in my America." She didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She just laid the papers on the podium, an early copy of what would soon go viral as the Doge file, Volume I. You can call it politics. You can dress it in poetry. But numbers don't weep and bank records don't lie. We followed the money, and now we're following the law. The room stirred. The hearing was only just beginning, but the lines were drawn, not in ink, in steel. Letitia James, having wrung every ounce of moral theater from her opening salvo, was just getting warmed up. She pivoted hard from performance to provocation. "A president," she thundered, "does not get to pick and choose which laws to enforce. This is a republic, not a monarchy." She was trying to channel Cato the Younger, but it was coming off more like a community theater version of Julius Caesar. "I am the sword and shield of the Constitution," she continued, pausing just long enough to let the cameras absorb her righteousness. It was political kabuki, sweeping declarations about civil rights, impassioned laments about the dismantling of DEI, accusations of systemic bigotry, all wrapped up in the solemn cadence of someone who believed moral volume equaled constitutional clarity. But here's the thing about passion. It's combustible. And right now, Letitia James was burning through every ounce of political oxygen in the room. Pam Bondi finally rose, slowly, intentionally. And when she spoke, it was as if someone had cracked open a window in a room full of gas. "Permission to respond," she said, voice steady as granite. "And I'll need more than 2 minutes if we're going to untangle this performance." A hush fell. Even the chair leaned forward. Pam didn't walk. She advanced. Ms. James has invoked faith, history, and the weight of generational trauma, Pam began, as if those things entitle her to spend without oversight, operate without audit, and redefine legality by emotion. She turned toward the witness panel, calm, measured, deadly. But I'm not here to argue theology. I'm here to talk about accountability. Letitia shifted slightly in her seat. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Pam locked eyes. You speak of pain, Ms. James, but pain does not equal permission. You carry the wounds of the past like they're blank checks for the present. No one gave you a divine right to reroute federal dollars through ideological pipelines. The Democrats in the chamber started to murmur. The Republicans leaned back, quietly enjoying the show. Pam pressed forward, slower now, like a surgeon leaning into the first incision. Justice, she said, isn't a veil for political indulgence. And it sure as hell isn't a shield against scrutiny. If your house is in order, then why fear the auditors? If your books are clean, then why fight the light? Letitia opened her mouth, but didn't speak. Pam delivered the final thrust, not with volume, but with surgical precision. You say you stand on the side of justice, then act like it. Welcome the review. Or admit what you're really afraid of, that behind the curtain of righteousness lies nothing but receipts. Silence. The chair cleared his throat, voice low. Let the record reflect. The witness has submitted a supplemental document, reallocation and violations report, pertaining to financial activity in 3 participating states. The clerk took the folder as if it were radioactive. And maybe it was. Letitia looked down, not out of guilt, no, but out of calculation. She was cornered, and she knew it. The next move would have to be louder, riskier, and more public. And it was coming. Because some people fight back with facts, others, they fight back with cameras. Pam Bondi had listened long enough. Righteous sermons, historical allusions, pseudo-poetic monologues dressed up as legal arguments. And now the moment had arrived. Not for another protest, but for a prosecution. She stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise. It resonated. We don't govern with tears. We govern with law. The phrase hit the room like a judge's gavel. Sharp, echoing, absolute. A few gasps escaped from the press box. Pens stopped scribbling. Microphones tilted forward. This chamber is not a confessional. It's not a therapy circle. And it is certainly not a stage for personal grievance turned public spending. Letitia James stiffened in her seat, her face tight as a knuckle. But Pam wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Let me speak plainly, for the taxpayers, not the cameras. When a state declares itself a sanctuary, but still expects full access to federal funds, that's not resistance. That's robbery. On the right side of the chamber, a few Republican aides murmured in approval, short, controlled bursts. On the left, arms folded tighter. One staffer from Oregon rolled his eyes so hard it looked like a medical emergency. Pam turned, not to the judges, but to the press gallery behind them. When DEI becomes a funnel for unchecked bureaucracy, when cities spend on translation services before crime prevention, when millions go to nonprofit collectives with zero oversight, I don't call that inclusion. I call that inversion. It's the inversion of priorities, the inversion of responsibility, where virtue signals replace actual virtue. Camera shutters clicked. Somewhere, a CNN producer mouthed, "Get that quote." Letitia's hands curled into fists, the color rising up her neck. Pam remained unbothered, her words now carrying the rhythm of inevitability. We reviewed the numbers. This isn't just New York. 21 states, 21 who think compliance is optional and consequence is oppression. She pulled out a sheet, data printed in clean, brutal columns. Even the stenographer blinked twice. Over $14 million redirected under ambiguous DEI allocations. $9.6 million subsidizing housing for illegal entrants, without identification, without background checks. $5.3 million labeled as community resilience education, none of which has been audited in the past 3 years. A rustle swept across the room. Democratic aides whispering nervously, press members typing ferociously, and on the far left, someone let out a not-so-quiet, "Oh, shh." Pam's gaze swept the room, not with drama, but with controlled intensity. You call it equity, I call it evasion. You call it social justice, I call it budgetary sabotage. Letitia sprang up, voice cutting through like a siren. So now we're criminalizing compassion? Is that it? We're punishing states for caring too much? Pam turned slowly, calmly, as if a student had asked the wrong question for the fourth time in a row. No, Ms. James, we're punishing states for spending like they have no parents, for treating tax dollars like monopoly money, for confusing activism with administration. She walked back toward her desk, but paused for one final strike. This is not a crusade, it's a correction, and it's long overdue. A sharp wave of tension pulsed across the gallery. One reporter muttered, "She's gunning for 2028. Another whispered, "That's gonna trend in 10 seconds. On C-SPAN's live stream, the comments had already exploded. Bondi bomb, Pam checkmate, Letitia meltdown. Because once the numbers are laid bare, no chant, no quote, no reverend cameo can shield you from what's next. Letitia James had taken hits before. She wore them like badges. But something in her eyes now flickered. Something brittle, desperate. She stood. Again. This time the fire in her voice was less volcanic, more choreographed. What we are witnessing is not law. It's a financial coup, a quiet tyranny executed not with guns, but with spreadsheets. You don't need tanks to control a nation. Just cut the money. The left side of the chamber erupted in rhythmic nods. The cameras tilted back toward her. She could feel the red lights again, and she turned to face them fully, ignoring Pam, ignoring the judges. This is no longer about grants. It's about who gets to define justice, who decides which communities are worthy. And I will not let them criminalize compassion. If she had ended there, she might have regained the room. But she made one mistake too many. She said, "Facts are tools of the powerful when they control the narrative." And that's when Pam Bondi moved. Not loudly, not dramatically, just moved. She rose with the stillness of someone who knew she didn't need to win the argument, because she'd already subpoenaed the truth. "Your Honor," Pam said, "I request permission to introduce a witness." The chair looked up. Slight pause. "A witness?" Pam nodded. "We've heard passion. Now I'd like to offer proof. Not from a pulpit, not from a press conference, but from the data itself." Letitia narrowed her eyes. The audience shifted, confused. Then, click. The doors at the rear of the chamber unlocked. A single figure stepped through. Jeans, black jacket, no tie, no entourage. Elon Musk. The room didn't gasp. It froze. The same man who launched rockets into orbit was now walking toward the witness chair with a USB stick in his hand, like it was the nuclear football. "Mr. Musk will testify to the forensic findings of the Doge file," Pam continued. "A data set compiled from publicly funded programs, compiled without bias, only bandwidth." A murmur surged through the press rows. CNN cameras jostled. MSNBC commentators texted frantically. Fox was already rerunning the walk-in on loop. The chair cleared his throat. "Mr. Musk, please state your name and affiliation for the record." Elon sat, adjusted the mic, and said, calm as ever, "Elon Musk, citizen, systems analyst, and lover of spreadsheets." Even the stenographer snorted. Pam took a seat. She didn't need to speak anymore. The next strike wouldn't come from rhetoric. It would come from receipts. Because once the Doge file was opened, there'd be no mistaking what came next. Not a political takedown, not a partisan hit job, just raw numbers. And sometimes numbers are louder than revolution. Elon Musk didn't come to argue. He came to upload. He tapped a key on the touchpad in front of him. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as a projection screen descended behind the witness table. And just like that, the Doge file was no longer a rumor. It was a spreadsheet with teeth. "This won't take long," Elon said flatly, like a man announcing the weather or a funeral. Slide 1, an unbroken chain of payments flowing from federal grant programs straight into what Musk labeled with a smirk, as activist laundering hubs. Nonprofits that existed more on paper than in any physical space. Education funds rerouted to consulting firms specializing in gender empathy alignment. He clicked again. Slide 2, Social Security numbers issued without birth certificates. Here we've got over 117,000 issued within a 12-month window, he explained. Roughly 38% had no verified place of birth and zero audit trail. Pause. Unless we now consider global citizen a valid ZIP code. A few gasps. One journalist choked on their latte. Elon didn't flinch. I cross-referenced these numbers against voter registration logs in 5 states. And here comes the good part. Click. Slide 3. Proposed municipal voting roll expansion. 800,000 undocumented residents. Highlighted in neon yellow, red stamped with internal draft NYC. He leaned back. 800,000, not 50, not 500. 800,000 people with no legal status. And someone, somewhere, thought, yeah, let's give them a ballot. The room stilled. Not because of silence, but because even outrage had momentarily run out of oxygen. Elon spoke again. No inflection, just the blade. I didn't come here to speculate on motives. I came here to show mechanisms. And this one's pretty straightforward. Manufacture eligibility, erase verification, expand influence. Letitia James shifted in her seat, her hand tightening into a fist just off frame from the C-SPAN broadcast. Elon turned his gaze directly toward the committee bench. And let me ask this. If everything's above board, if every dollar was well spent and every ID was legit, why block the audit? He stared for a beat. Then, in my world, when someone deletes the logs, it's not because the system is clean. It's because they know it's not. A murmur, low, rippling, contagious, moved through the room. One Republican senator whispered, "That's checkmate." A Democratic aide reached for their phone, face pale. Letitia stared straight ahead, blinking exactly once. And then, she snapped. "You arrogant little parasite," Letitia shouted, standing. "You think you can hijack democracy with a damn PowerPoint? You're not elected. You're not accountable. You're just Trump's lapdog with a Wi-Fi signal." The room recoiled, not at the outburst, but at the desperation bleeding through every word. Letitia turned to the bench, arms flailing now. "In her," she pointed at Pam. "That blonde opportunist wouldn't know equity if it hit her with a Bible and a badge. This hearing is a joke, a tech bro ambush cooked up by a fascist wannabe president and his billionaire buddy with a God complex." Elon remained seated, one brow slightly raised. He waited for her breath to run out, then said calmly, "When someone accuses everyone in the room of being the problem, it usually means they just got caught holding the receipts. A full beat. No need for applause. The damage had been done." Letitia sank back into her chair like a collapsed billboard, loud, oversized, and suddenly unreadable. Elon closed the laptop with the soft, satisfying thunk of a trap snapping shut. "That's all I've got," he said, standing. "Unless someone wants to see the video files." Pam Bondi smiled, not smugly, strategically, because in politics, as in code, the bug is often the design, and Musk had just debugged their budget. The silence in the chamber wasn't peaceful, it was radioactive. You could feel it humming under the marble floors, vibrating through every wooden bench, seeping into the breath of every aide, anchor, and agitator who had packed the hearing like it was opening night on Broadway. And then came the voice. Having reviewed the testimony, evidence, and the constitutional scope of executive authority, this court issues a preliminary ruling in favor of the administration. The federal government does, under current law, retain the discretion to suspend financial disbursements pending investigation. The words didn't echo. They detonated. Letitia James didn't speak. She didn't even blink. But the cameras didn't need sound. They caught the tremor in her jaw, the slow tilt of her head downward, and that single damning frame, her hands clutching a folder too tightly, as if law could be held together with grip alone. CNN cut to commercial. Fox News zoomed in. In living rooms across the country, 2 Americas watched the same shot and saw 2 completely different movies. But inside the chamber, Reality was unanimous. Pam Bondi sat still, expression unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But her pen tapped once on the desk, an unspoken semaphore to the rest of the room. It's done. Letitia's staff huddled like a collapsing campaign. One whispered something about appealing. Another stared at the floor, muttering, "They're gonna pull us next." And outside the Capitol, the ripple effect had already begun. By noon, the governors of Colorado and Oregon issued vague statements about reviewing current funding frameworks. By dusk, 3 additional states announced they were voluntarily freezing non-essential grant requests in alignment with federal transparency goals. And by nightfall, a top aide to a powerful Democratic senator was caught on a hot mic saying, "Pull back, let this storm pass. If we fight this now, we bleed out by midterms." They weren't waving the white flag, but they sure as hell were folding the map. Letitia left the chamber first, not flanked, not defiant, just walking. The kind of walk that doesn't go anywhere, just away. And somewhere beneath the hum of news vans and flashing press lights, thunder rolled across a sky that no longer belonged to her side of the aisle. Letitia James had left the chamber in silence. But silence, as it turns out, is a terrible PR strategy in the digital age. It took less than 48 hours for the dam to burst. It started with a leaked live stream. Accidental, of course. Letitia, pacing in a private conference room, fists clenched, voice cracking like glass under pressure. "Nothing formed against me shall prosper. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me." She said it like a broken record with a martyr complex and a Bluetooth headset. Problem was, her Bluetooth was still paired to the podium mic. The feed went out live to a regional network. And the internet did what the internet does best. It devoured her. Within hours, TikTok had dozens of remix versions. One had her voice auto-tuned into a gospel trap beat. Another synced her mantra to the theme of "Curb Your Enthusiasm." A third just ran it on loop over footage of her court loss, captioned, "Nothing formed against me, except federal law." Meanwhile, Reverend Al Sharpton, Letitia's preferred backup singer in moments of political turbulence, was enjoying his own little PR implosion. A campaign finance disclosure dropped revealing he had received $500,000 from Kamala Harris's PAC 2 weeks before his exclusive MSNBC interview with the VP. Oops. When reporters called for comment, Sharpton replied, "I don't recall the details," which as politicians speak for, "Yes, I did it," and "No, you can't prove it mattered." And what did Elon Musk do? Nothing. Not a press conference, not a speech, just one tweet, one emoji, no caption, no context, just a juice box and a smirk. It was retweeted over 3 million times. Because sometimes the most lethal rebuttal is a smile that says, "I didn't even have to try." And as the left scrambled to plug the leaks, the right simply watched, cold soda in hand, while the narrative ship circled the drain. In the weeks that followed, a strange thing happened. States started behaving. You see, it turns out that cutting the purse strings of entitlement-fueled bureaucracy works better than 1,000 speeches. Colorado shut down 2 community equity initiatives and quietly reallocated funding to law enforcement training. Illinois withdrew its pending sanctuary city expansion grant before anyone could even ask. And New York? Well, New York entered what pundits lovingly called a budgetary sabbatical. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court released its final ruling, affirmed. The executive branch does, in fact, have the right to pause federal disbursement when credible concerns of misuse arise. It wasn't even close. 6-3. CNN called it troubling precedent. Fox called it a restoration of adult supervision. And the American people? They called it long overdue. Polls showed a 17-point increase in support for federal financial audits. A majority of independents backed Bondi's approach, and even some blue state governors began issuing transparency memos as preemptive damage control. And as for Pam, she didn't tour the talk shows. She didn't throw victory parties. She gave one quote, short, surgical, and instantly iconic. "Victory doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the clearest law." That sentence now hangs framed in the offices of 6 freshman senators. And somewhere, tucked between the rustling headlines and the shifting winds of public opinion, a question began to form. Not loudly, not radically, but inevitably. If we've allowed this much waste in the light, what have they been doing in the dark? The story had closed, but the audit had just begun.
Yeah, but everyone think of that one. I thought it was pretty good. He did a pretty good job on that and laid it out well. This doesn't have to do with, this one didn't have to do with her other crimes. I think she's going to jail for those, or she should, in any case. Okay, programming note. In the next few days or over the weekend, I'm hoping to, I got someone who might come on about the jab. They were harmed by the jab, and they're going to talk about that issue. All the stuff that happens to them when they got the jab and the side effects and all that. So, and in the future, I hope to have some other guests too that I'm talking to, but a lot of them are reluctant to come on. So, all right, talk to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.